For me, my favorite, there were two real takeaways. Well, I guess three, and we'll talk about them all. You want to call the show today, by the way, it's 877-344-4893. The phone number to call is 877-344-4893. My three takeaways from Monday Night Raw were they announced the first match for Wrestlepalooza. And what I love is that they announced the first match for Wrestlepalooza, and it's none of the matches that we're thinking of. It's Stephanie Vaquer and Io Sky, which we'll talk about at some point. I love the tease of the Usos at the end of the show. This is a Jey Uso that people have been asking for. This is that serious. We had people going what if he stopped doing all that yeet stuff? We were like, he's not, and he's not. But there is a version of that Jey Uso that still does the yeet stuff and still embraces the audience and still is himself and is the guy that's connected with the audience that much, but has a more serious side to him. Maybe isn't smiling all the time. Maybe he's unhappy about some things. And having Jimmy Uso come out and just that tease. Lots of teases going on right now in WWE. Just that tease at the end of the show with Jimmy and Jey Uso and Jey saying, I can't do it alone. Jey saying, I need you. The idea that this version of the Usos, well, we'll talk about what this version of the Usos could be. But I think the segment that I've been thinking about the most is the CM Punk Becky Lynch segment. Seth Rollins came out for a little bit of it, but ultimately it was, okay, two people who are notorious on the microphone going back and forth, Becky Lynch and CM Punk. If you have thoughts about this segment, 877-344-4893 is our phone number. Of course, this comes off after Clash at the Castle when, I think that there was a time when many were kind of at least wildly speculating upon the idea that Becky Lynch could be a member of the Vision, that Becky Lynch could join this group. But I feel like those speculative thoughts kind of went away, that it wasn't really something that we were talking about anymore. Becky had her own stuff going on. Seth had his own stuff going on. And although Becky was making no secret about the fact that she had a hot husband, and depending on where she was located in the world, a hot American husband, it was still not something that we realized. We didn't realize that those were breadcrumbs. We didn't realize that she was familiarizing us almost. And maybe I'm giving too much credit. But in hindsight, it seems like, okay, maybe she's, laying the foundation for the fact that now the audience is aware that we're fully, there's no sort of, did you know Seth and Becky are married? In real life. In real life, that's what we used to say. In real life, they're married. It's all one thing, right? And I think that she was kind of doing that with all the hot husband stuff. And so she ends up coming out at the end of Clash in Paris. And I think the part of this that nobody's really talking about right now is how convenient it is that Paul Heyman is in the hospital with his larynx being worked on, right? That Paul Heyman had his larynx injured by Roman Reigns. But what the result of that is that Paul Heyman is not on TV anymore. And what we saw on Raw, to me, was, a distinct line that I felt between what Seth and Becky were doing and what Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker were doing. And while it was still all under the vision of Seth Rollins, and the whole time it felt like they were referencing it, that this is what our motivation is, the vision of Seth Rollins, even Becky, this is the motivation, the vision that this man has. But I thought it was very interesting that I'm watching going, oh yeah, as soon as Paul Heyman is back, I could see him with Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. But does he fit in with Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch? Now, I don't know. The Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch thing, to me, has legs on legs on legs on legs. To me, the Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch thing feels so much different than it did a few years back. It feels fresh. It feels cool. It feels like it's got Seth and Becky in the positions that they should be in. I think it's taken them both to another level very, very quickly in terms of the story. And I don't think that Paul Heyman, and look, I don't think Paul Heyman needs to be a part of the Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch story. If Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch are only together temporarily, in terms of like, well, we just want to tell a story that gets us to Wrestlepalooza, and then after we're done with whatever is going on with Becky Lynch and Punk and Seth Rollins, we're going to just get back to Punk and Seth, and we're going to keep Seth and Becky apart. And I think that that's possible. And that may even have been the intention, but maybe if it works well, they go, you know what, we're going to keep the Seth and Becky thing going. Because I think as of now, I might change my mind later, but I think as of now, they should keep the Seth and Becky thing going. But what you had was a Seth and Becky that like existed outside of the Heyman sphere. And I feel like there's two things you could do. You could have Heyman realize the position that he's in and take a back seat and allow Seth and Becky to just exist over here in this space where we all have the same goal, but you guys are over here, and I'm managing the younger talent. I'm in charge of Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed because it makes perfect sense with those two. Or you could have a power struggle where Becky Lynch is sitting there going like, actually, I'm the mastermind behind the stuff that Seth Rollins is doing. Actually, the stuff that Seth Rollins is doing, and it's not even the mastermind, it's like the stuff that Seth Rollins is doing is stuff that he and I have concocted together. Because the same way that Paul Heyman, when he was with Roman Reigns, the whole story behind it was this isn't just television. That Paul Heyman is with Roman Reigns all the time. That the bloodline is 24/7. And that was what you got on television. When you saw Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns together, you got the impression that these two characters you could imagine existed off screen. That after the show went off the air, your imagination took it to a place where Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns are still working together until we get to the next television show where we see them together. With Seth and Paul Heyman, I don't think you have the same vibe. I don't think that you think of Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins strategizing together outside of the television show. I think you think of Paul Heyman representing Seth on the show, and that's kind of it. So what happens if we realize that when Seth is coming up with these plans, when Seth is concocting his ideas, there is somebody that he's talking to when they're not in an arena. There is somebody that he's talking to from home. There is somebody that he's talking to on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And that somebody is the man Becky Lynch, because she lives in his house and gave birth to his child. She's his wife. Of course she's going to be there all the time. So I think that that's a relationship that is stronger than any that Paul Heyman could have with a talent, and not something that's really been explored with the possessiveness that Paul Heyman has over the talents that he's with on screen. So I think that there's something there. And again, I don't know if they'll go there. They may just go like, okay, this is just to build to one mixed tag match, and then we're going to separate it all anyway, which, I mean, it's all possible. But I felt that when I was watching this segment on Raw. The idea that CM Punk is waiting for Seth Rollins to show up. CM Punk finds out that Seth Rollins is already in the building. Somehow Adam Pearce is not aware of all the doors that are in that arena. He's not watching them all. I mean, poor Adam Pearce just having to show up and be like, I don't know, man, Seth's already here. And Punk's like, what? I've been literally waiting here all night. And Adam Pearce going, yeah, I don't know, man. He's here. I guess there's more door. Maybe he walked here. Maybe he was sleeping here from Clash in Paris. Maybe he walked in with the fans and had a ticket. I don't know. But what I'm telling you is you've been wasting your time. Hey, I'm getting text. He's already here. So Punk then goes, okay, fine. Strange already, right? And then Punk walks to the ring and does the whole like, well, I'm not leaving until Seth comes out. And Seth's music plays instantly, which I didn't necessarily expect. I thought we were going to get a little old school Punk where he has to pull a chair up into the ring and do whatever he does to pass the time, but he didn't have to pass any time because Seth's music plays and here comes Becky Lynch. And Becky Lynch is doing a Seth impression and Becky Lynch is doing great. But Becky then sets herself up in this back and forth with CM Punk where Becky is saying that she has problems of her own with CM Punk. Number one, every problem that CM Punk has with Seth Rollins, he would have with Becky Lynch as well. That Seth is Becky's husband. So every negative thing that CM Punk has said about Seth Rollins, CM Punk has said about the father of Becky Lynch's child, the man who Becky Lynch feels is the greatest man on earth. And that's how you should feel about the man that you married. And then Punk says, well, I'm sorry you married a bum. That's not my fault. And then Becky also brings up the fact that, look, Becky was part of the roster that CM Punk left behind. Becky was part of this roster that was having to wrestle matches while fans chanted CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk, because CM Punk had left everybody. Which, again, I have never been a fan of the... I mean, if it's a heel saying it, that's fine. But the idea that realistically, any fan should be like, well, CM Punk's not a good guy because he abandoned the WWE. He abandoned his fellow wrestlers. Like, if you have a job and it's not working out, you don't stay for your coworkers. You can still love your coworkers. You can still be friends with them. Now, the coworkers that maybe as part of a storyline say, you ghosted me or you treated me poorly or whatever, that's a different thing. But if you're just saying, I'm mad because you abandoned WWE, that's not a real... People are allowed to quit their jobs. But then Punk asks for Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins comes out. Becky won't let Punk pass. And she keeps stepping in front of him and keeps stepping in front of him. Seth Rollins ends up leaving. And my favorite part by a mile was the physicality. Becky not slapping him in the face once, but slapping him in the face over and over and over again. Hitting him in the chest, going back and forth. One cheek to the next, backhanded one. Boom, boom, slap, 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 slap to the point that her hair was all out of place. And I mean, she was laying it in. It was awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And then all CM Punk said was, I'm going to make Seth regret cashing in on me, and I'm going to make you regret putting your hands on me. And of course, while they're in there, everybody's chanting, AJ Lee, AJ Lee, AJ Lee. Becky is saying she doesn't even work here. AJ Lee, AJ Lee, AJ Lee. The minute Punk says, because the whole angle here is that Becky is doing all of this to Punk to rile him up. But Punk won't hit her. She's a woman. He would never hit a woman. I'm going to make you regret putting your hands on me. Everybody goes, he's got to be going home. He's got to be going home. Back to Chicago to talk to his wife, AJ Lee, to finally bring AJ Lee back. And we've talked about AJ Lee coming back. We talked about her coming back at the Royal Rumble. We talked about her coming back everywhere. Ever since CM Punk returned at Survivor Series a couple of years ago. Every interview he's ever done. Is AJ going to come back? What about AJ? Is AJ going to come back? People have been asking for AJ Lee this entire time. And everything is pointing in the direction of a CM Punk, AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins match. AJ Lee is also, by the way, booked to be at a signing. She's going to do the big event in New York on November 15th. I don't know if that makes it more or less likely that she's returning to WWE, but clearly being around wrestling is not something that she's trying to avoid. I think that people are looking at the fact that SmackDown is in Chicago. Obviously, that's something that's come up many, many times. And then Raw is back in the States on Monday as well. I don't know if AJ's coming back. Cena's already at the SmackDown in Chicago. If AJ, I mean, obviously Chicago would be a great place to do it in. Maybe Punk shows up, maybe brings out AJ, and they just cut a promo on Becky. I don't think Becky and Seth necessarily need to be there if this is when the return is happening. And because of the schedule of events, Wrestlepalooza is like right around the corner. Wrestlepalooza is like 2 weeks from Saturday already. So I think that and there's no way that they're unaware of what's being teased here. There's no way that there's not an awareness of the fact that fans are looking at this going, oh my God, I think we're going to get AJ Lee. Oh my God, I think we're going to get AJ Lee. But, and I say but, because I think it should be brought forward. There was a moment on Monday Night Raw last night. And what do we say on Notsam Wrestling? Everything counts. It's rule number 3. These are the rules. Watch the product, speculate wildly, and everything counts. When we talk, CM Punk has friendships publicly, because you see it on social media, with a lot of different women on the roster, men and women on the roster. But this is because it's a mixed tag scenario. Women on the roster, whether it's Roxanne Perez, Jade Cargill. He's worn Jade Cargill T-shirts. We've seen, but we haven't necessarily seen it on the show. We've seen maybe clips from live events, whatever it is, but we haven't seen it on the show. Last night, CM Punk is waiting in the parking lot for Seth Rollins that Seth Rollins never even shows up to. Why is CM Punk in the parking lot? Well, it leads to a scenario where CM Punk is waiting there, and who comes out to check on him? Who comes out to see if he's okay? Who is CM Punk talking to when Adam Pearce goes out to tell him that Seth Rollins is already there? Rhea Ripley. And at first glance, I didn't think much of it. I said, okay, Rhea Ripley's just out there chilling with Punk in the parking lot. They're waiting for Seth Rollins, whatever. And Rhea didn't say anything derogatory about anybody. Rhea didn't insert herself into the drama. Rhea didn't say anything about Becky Lynch. She just said, I saw what happened to you at Clash, and that sucks. That's all. But why are we establishing an on-screen relationship, a friendship, between CM Punk and Rhea Ripley? Is there a chance that it's not AJ Lee at Wrestlepalooza? Is there a chance that it's CM Punk and Rhea Ripley? I believe that in any circumstance, except for the return of AJ Lee, CM Punk and Rhea Ripley in a mixed tag is as big a team as you can possibly get to face Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. But I said except for CM Punk and AJ Lee. And I don't know if this is something where maybe WWE is trying to throw Rhea Ripley into the mix so that people like us can speculate wildly and start to go, well, maybe it's not this, maybe it's that. So it's not so clear the direction that it's going. So they present us a road that has multiple forks in it. Maybe it's a red herring. Maybe we think it's going to be AJ Lee, but just in case it's not AJ Lee, let's start building some foundation so it can be Rhea Ripley. So it's not like we just have to say, okay, well, you've heard CM Punk be supportive of this person on social media, so now they're going to be a tag team. Now you get to a point where you're like, okay, I saw them on Raw together, they were doing this, they were doing that, it makes sense that for this night they would team. Is the audience disappointed if it's CM Punk and Rhea Ripley as a team? I think that AJ Lee returning adds tremendous marquee value to Wrestlepalooza. I mean, part of me feels like AJ Lee shouldn't even be on television before Wrestlepalooza. Like, everybody's talking about SmackDown, everybody's talking about this. What if CM Punk just shows up to Raw next week and says, I'm bringing somebody who you haven't seen in a while, but I think you all know exactly who it is, and leaves it at that. Like the same way that when CM Punk returned to AEW, we all knew he was going to be there, but they never actually said it. And it made this moment be this moment. What if we don't have AJ Lee on television at all? And what if we create this scenario over here where it could be Rhea Ripley? Because Rhea Ripley is probably the one performer on the entire roster that if it was her, people would be bummed out that AJ Lee wasn't there, but people are not going to boo Rhea Ripley. People are not going to boo the match. They're not going to poo-poo Rhea Ripley's involvement because Rhea Ripley is as big as it gets as far as the WWE active roster goes. But so what if you build this foundation where you have people like me saying it could be Rhea Ripley? And CM Punk never specifically says AJ Lee. Those words never come out of his mouth. And we never see AJ Lee on television. But we think for sure. And so that way, we're going to buy Wrestlepalooza. We're going to buy into this ESPN app because there's enough of a chance that it is her that we're going to be there. And then when she does come out, and it's like, as much of a safe bet as it feels like, the fact that we win the bet, that's what that energy is. When they don't announce something, but they make it clear that it's going to happen, and you buy into that, and then you get what you thought you were going to get, it's like winning at gambling. It's the best. It feels good. It makes you feel like you've won something. And I think it makes the reaction that much bigger. If it's me, I'm sticking with AJ Lee as the CM Punk partner because that's the super match, and also that's what makes people talk after the show. If you want to say, what's going to get Sam's siren blaring after Wrestlepalooza, what are we going to be discussing on an emergency podcast? It would be an AJ Lee return to WWE. But I think you've only got 2 weeks. I don't know. For me, I'm not using the AJ Lee return on television. I'm hinting at AJ Lee. I'm hinting hard at AJ Lee. I'm making it pretty clear that it's almost definitely going to be AJ Lee. However, could be Rhea Ripley too. It would make perfect sense that it was Rhea Ripley. And then boom, we get to Wrestlepalooza and CM Punk hits that ring. And Seth and Becky are saying, what? No partner, no partner? And then, boom. AJ Lee's music hits and those Chuck Taylors come out again. And the place goes absolutely bonkers. You want to hear a crowd? You want to hear a reaction to somebody? Something that you're going to put on that, year in review reel? Something that you're going to go like, hey, this is why ESPN invested in these WWE PLEs. That's the moment. And I think planting Rhea Ripley as a seed of doubt and then executing on this moment with AJ Lee, for me, it's the way to go.